Monday, May 18th, 2020 meeting of the Board of Commissioners of Radnor Township. As always on our Zoom meetings, we're going to start with a Pledge of Allegiance. However, I'm going to remind people that if you are sitting next to a fixed camera, consider not standing up, because if we do, then we're just going to be able to see your pants. With that in mind, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving to public participation. Anna Marie Hessman writes, "Dear Commissioners, I was surprised to learn that my Commissioner, Sean Farhi, planned to propose some major changes tonight to the Garrett Hill zoning. Many members of our community are under immense pressure right now coping with the effects of the pandemic health crisis. Crises are inherently not an opportune time to make measured, careful research plans for growth and development. The stuff professional zoning is made of. I respectfully suggest, as a constituent and someone who grew up living adjacent to and loving many things about the Garrett Hill community, that we postpone any such discussion until we can meet in person with Pennsylvania on quote green end quote, and ongoing requirements gathering by leadership facilitation of one or more planning professionals. Thank you as always for your underpaid and often thankless efforts in support of our community. Anna Marie Hessman." Gary Merkin writes, and we'll actually have to look at the time now. "Good evening. I hope this finds you as well as can be expected during these challenging times. I'm a longtime resident of Ward 7. My comments are directed at various pieces of legislation being proposed by the Ward 7 Commissioner as listed in a recent newsletter distributed by email some residents of the ward and also posted on Facebook. First, this is a terrible time to be considering unnecessary legislation. There are many more immediate pressing needs to consider. Safely reopening Radnor's economy, fixing broken roadways and dangerous traffic patterns throughout the township, and encouraging the establishment of viable businesses in Garrett Hill's empty storefronts are priorities far more deserving of the board's immediate attention. Second, Commissioner Farhi's public communications incorrectly suggest the Garrett Hill zoning district was developed and implemented at least 21 years ago. The newsletter and extensive written responses to comments submitted to the board by an individual resident of Ward 7 that Commissioner Farhi shared by email and Facebook the weekend before this board meeting, there were references to bringing things into the 21st century in terms like, quote, obsolete, end quote, and, quote, outdated, end quote. But the zoning district was not codified until October 26, 2009, just over 10 and a half years ago. It was based on the Garrett Hill Master Plan adopted by the Board of Commissioners in July 2008 and amended a year later. The zoning district is not a legislative relic from 30 or 40 or 50 years ago. It was the result of public discussion and study by a cross-section of Ward 7. If the township wants to revisit the issues a decade later, then it should do so transparently based on facts, not misrepresentations. Moreover, publishing comments and responses to the comments before the board's meeting might run afoul of state and local open meeting laws. The insulting ad hominem attacks against the individual who submitted the comments were highly inappropriate at best. They are possibly cause for censure or at least an ethics investigation and could be the basis of a libel lawsuit, which would cost the township time and money to defend in court. I take no position on building heights. I think outside dining during certain hours is a good idea and with outdoor heating equipment can be extended year-round. The idea to restrict the rights of property owners who want to rent to students might not be constitutional and might cost the township time and money to defend in court. Such a restriction would also depress property values for those owners. Third, Commissioner Farhi's proposed legislation to prohibit the sale of recreational marijuana within most of the township is premature. The sale of recreational marijuana is not legal in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, so the proposed legislation is based on a hypothetical situation with no indication of an imminent change in the status quo. The reasoning set forth in the Commissioner's newsletter and a series of larger font, previous smaller font discussions on Facebook is based on conjecture, not facts. The reasoning is entirely free from logic. If the township wants to restrict or prohibit the sale of potentially dangerous products, then it should also do so for tobacco, beer, wine, and hard liquor. If the state someday legalizes selling recreational marijuana, then prohibiting the regulated sale of a legal product might not even be constitutional. Again, such restrictions and prohibitions might cost the township time and money to defend in court. The Board of Commissioners has enough to do to restart the local economy safely, fix current problems, and address the storefronts in Garrett Hill that have been empty for years. The proposed legislation should be tabled. Brendan Murphy writes, good evening, everyone. My name is Brendan Murphy, and my fiance and I recently purchased property on the Garrett Hill overlay, which I have since learned has been the topic of much debate and litigation dealing with zoning restrictions. While I am not fully versed in every issue that is being presented by a group of people that do not reside on the street in question, what is clear to me is that this group does not have our best interest in mind as property owners and taxpayers on this block. What is also clear to me is that Commissioner Sean Farhi has done an admirable job representing our interests, and I would like to lend him our full support. I cannot imagine why anyone who does not reside on our block would be so passionate about creating litigations to restrict a homeowner's ability to improve their property value, so I can only assume their intentions are self-satisfying in some way. I also cannot imagine why anyone who does not reside on our block would be given any say in these litigations at all. My fiance and I are looking to raise a family on a safe street in a good area that is affordable for us. I believe the quality of the street is improving daily as more residents like-minded to us inhabit it. There is still dilapidated housing on the block, which I believe will eventually be improved to a higher standard over time unless the voices of the people in this debate who do not reside on the block are given credence and allowed to inhibit progress. Thank you for giving us a forum to voice our opinion and full support for Sean Farhi, and I hope whatever decision is made has given more weight to the opinions of actual residents on the street in question than any interloper fulfilling their own selfish desires or visions of dilapidation and poverty for our block. Thank you for your consideration, service, and time. Kim Cruz writes, good evening. My name is Kim Cruz. I live in Garrett Hill, across the street from the edge of the Garrett Hill overlay. I object to agenda item 5, spot A, proposed by Commissioner Farhi. Despite Commissioner Farhi's Facebook comments to the contrary, the Garrett Hill overlay was developed in the 21st century over time after numerous open public meetings to which everyone was invited and discussions and revisions with members of the Garrett Hill community, Radnor Township staff, and many others. Commissioner Farhi had the option to provide his input on the overlay during that transparent development period. He chose not to participate. I find it very disingenuous that he chooses to make these Garrett Hill zoning changes now during a 3-month pandemic when public participation is very limited. There were many zoning changes made in the Garrett Hill zoning code to the benefit of the property owner and the community. The Garrett Hill zoning code codifies the community spirit and family values that make up Garrett Hill. Garrett Avenue is the first biracial street on the main line. In my opinion, Commissioner Farhi is trying to drive out many generations old families from Garrett Avenue and Williams. Some of the Garrett Hill zoning code eases setback restrictions. It's disgraceful that Commissioner Farhi is cherry-picking the Garrett Hill zoning code to change the height restrictions. Commissioner Farhi's most vocal supporter of changing this part of the Garrett Hill zoning code doesn't own property in Garrett Hill. Check the Delaware County Public Access records. As for the outdoor dining in Garrett Hill, if I truly thought Commissioner Farhi was concerned about just the existing restaurants and didn't have a hidden agenda, I would support this change with some modification. However, after he called his constituents Grinches during last Thursday night's Parks and Rec meeting and complained that he wasn't sure they could even make microwave popcorn at the new building at Tennell, but he could eat a hot dog at Enki, I'm not supporting this proposed change. I urge you, commissioners, to vote against these 2 Garrett Hill zoning code changes, or at least table them until such time as the county has reopened and an open, in-person public meeting of more than 10 people can happen in Garrett Hill to discuss these 2 zoning changes. As for agenda item 5, spot B, I urge you to either table or vote no on this item. If and when marijuana is legalized in Pennsylvania, dispensaries will have lots of security and other restrictions imposed upon them by the Commonwealth. There are already liquor stores, beer distributors, and shops that sell cigarettes that are closer to 1,000 feet from municipal parks and 2,000 feet from municipal parks with playgrounds or sport fields, courts, etc., or property owned or leased by a school, daycare, or university, and closer than 500 feet from residential, institutional, or mixed-use zoning. Why aren't restrictions being placed on them? Thank you for your time and services. Sean, we need to have issues that concern less lengthy-minded residents going forward. Mr. Reginald Day writes, first and foremost, my greatest concern is that this procedure and accompanying discussion will be presented in the way it is without the public present. Too many concerned citizens whose voices need to be heard or whose presence needs to be felt cannot participate. They are unable to physically attend because of their virus fear, or participate because they do not possess the technological skills or means to communicate their thoughts that need to be heard. This issue is too important not to have the greatest opportunity for input and full discussion by all interested parties. On that basis alone, this measure must be tabled until such time as all interested parties can attend and be given an equal opportunity to express their views. I strongly oppose Mr. Farhi's suggested revisions to the Garrett Hill overlay zoning ordinance for a variety of reasons. The ordinance is far from outdated as he suggests. It was written in 2009 and put into effect in all caps the 21st century. Sidewalk dining in Garrett Hill, : What Mr. Farhi seems to miss is that Garrett Hill is not all caps Wayne when it comes to our local dining needs. His suggestion that sidewalk dining should be allowed certainly does not take into account the very character of the area in question. Where is there an opportunity for outdoor dining to be located? Outdoor dining behind Flip and Bailey would preclude that as a parking area, as would in the area in front of Basil Zesto and the former Garrett Hill Market. What about Conestoga Pizza at Antonella's? They have all caps no space available at all. Garrett Hill Ale House is the only one with area to offer right behind their building. Parking has always been an issue in the neighborhood, and such a measure would only exacerbate the problem. Seeking space at the business center is out of the question as they already have a serious parking situation as it is. Our sidewalks just cannot accommodate this. Changing the Garrett Hill overlay zoning ordinance, : Of even greater concern is Mr. Farhi's suggestion of changing the roof height by 6 feet from 30 to 36 feet in the structural portion of the Garrett Hill overlay zoning ordinance. That is exactly the can of worms the Commission opened when this issue arose several meetings ago. At that time, the Commission assured the citizens that the developer's abuse of the 30-foot height limit in the ordinance as it stood at that time, and still does, ! Would be a one-time event. After taking the cowardly position of accepting a $10,000 fine instead of enforcing the ordinance as it reads and thereby protecting the interests of the majority of the residents who elected their commissioners to enforce the laws and to serve them, the BOC is now inexplicably considering an effort to codify the initial breaking of the ordinance! In the earlier incident of the code violation, the problem arose because of faulty due diligence of the Community Development Department. Now, Mr. Farhi's measure seeks to compound that failure by changing the ordinance to eliminate the initial wrong. That ordinance was hammered out with the Township after countless hours of strenuous effort by the Garrett Hill community in an effort to maintain our unique character within Radnor Township. It is incumbent upon the Board of Township Commissioners to live up to their sworn duty to enforce the Township's ordinances, not pick them apart willy-nilly on the whim of a single or few dissenting individuals. Patty and Rick Barker write, it is now 6:46. Rick Barker, 920 Lewis Lane, Rosemont, PA. The impetus for the creation of the Garrett Hill zoning district was the 2003 Radnor Township Comprehensive Land Use Plan. The community was alerted by the Board of Commissioners, BOC, request for proposal, RFP, in 2007 to hire a planning firm to implement the zoning changes in Garrett Hill. The community was very concerned, and more than 100 Garrett Hillians attended the next BOC meeting and demanded that they be involved in the process. The BOC appointed the 9-member Garrett Hill Steering Committee to oversee the rezoning process. Marion Hull of URS was retained as the planner, and Jim Campbell of Campbell Thomas retained as the project architect. Numerous, well-advertised public community and steering committee meetings were held throughout the entire planning process. 4, quote, charrettes, end quotes, were conducted by the planner in service to creating the Garrett Hill Master Plan. Notice of all 4 of these charrettes was mailed to each household in the 7th Ward. Hundreds of Garrett Hillians attended each charrette. Drafts of the Garrett Hill Master Plan were vetted by the GH Steering Committee and the Garrett Hill community members. The BOC adopted the GH Master Plan on July 21st, 2008. The planner and the architect created a draft of a proposed ordinance for Garrett Hill. The proposed ordinance was vetted by the GH Steering Committee and GH community members. The GH zoning district ordinances were adopted formally on October 26, 2009. Hundreds of Garrett Hillians participated in this rezoning process. The opportunity for public access and participation was underscored, never limited. These are underscore facts. The new ordinances were adopted in the 21st century. They are forward-looking. They balance the natural tension that exists between residents and businesses. The ordinances are the most liberal zoning in the township. Please do not take my word for this. Just compare the previous zoning with the 2009 ordinances. By right property rights were greatly expanded. Setbacks were relaxed. Impervious limitations were relaxed. Building envelopes were greatly enlarged. Redevelopment within the district was no longer limited to, quote, grandfathered footprints. Lots could now contain larger buildings. Mixed use was permitted. The overlay is not outdated or obsolete. To suggest otherwise belies the facts. To suggest that a small group of people dictated how others should live is overtly mendacious. Whether willful or by ignorance, to engage in these false narratives is deceptive. Not only do the falsehoods being offered concern me greatly, the use of baseless ad hominem attacks on participants' character has no place in local government. Intimidation has no place in local government. It serves no one. It hurts people. It destroys faith in the integrity of our elected officials and their ability to govern fairly. It erodes the capacity for collaboration and to produce the best outcomes. The steering committee served with the highest degree of integrity. The GH steering committee is to be lauded for their selfless dedication, their fair and entirely transparent process. The community, both business and resident alike, is to be lauded for their diligent engagement. The GH zoning district rezoning process was truly exemplary. Those who denigrate the process subvert the citizens' right to self-government, debase the GH community, and demean themselves as well. The information in this email and any attachments may contain conflict. Okay, that's the signature line. Okay, this comes from Patty Barker. I respectfully request that you table item number 5A under new business, quote, Garrett Hill overlay zoning changes, end quote, on tonight's agenda until such time that Garrett Hillians can attend in-person meetings. As you are aware, Commissioner Farhi is proposing, quote, temporary and permanent changes, end quote, to the Garrett Hill zoning district ordinances. Specifically, he wants to increase Garrett Avenue building height to 36 feet, currently 30 feet, close. Additionally, he would like to add outdoor dining. However, the details of his proposed changes are underscored not included in the board's meeting packet. I believe introducing such an important item during the current coronavirus pandemic is irresponsible and short-sighted. I believe it's regrettable that due to COVID-19, the timing of this agenda item greatly hampers any meaningful public comment. Radnor Township published a request for proposal, RFP, in 2007, to rezone parts of Garrett Hill as a transit-oriented district, TOD. The community rose up and demanded to be included in a process that would seriously impact their neighborhood. The Board of Commissioners appointed a 9-member Garrett Hill steering committee comprised of 8 Garrett Hill residents and 1 Garrett Hill business owner. Over the next 2.5 years, hundreds of Garrett Hillians worked long and hard along with the steering committee, the planner, and architect, as well as township staff to craft documents that would protect the character of our neighborhood and preserve our community values. To level the accusations, as some have, that the Garrett Hill zoning district documents were written by a few for personal gain and to deprive others of their property rights is simply untrue. To reiterate, I respectfully request that you table this agenda item until such time that Garrett Hill community members can attend the BOC meetings and make their voices heard. I believe this is only right and fair. Many thanks for your service to the residents of Radnor Township. Roberta Winters writes, I want to thank the board for the opportunity to provide comment as an individual resident of the 7th Ward on new business item regarding changes in the Garrett Hill overlay. First, it is important to periodically examine land use at a county and township level through comprehensive land use planning. Such big picture thinking is imperative to guide future changes in zoning and their ongoing implementation. Thus, before modifying zoning in any area of the township, I believe it is prudent for the commissioners to complete an updated land use plan for Radnor Township. Given the current circumstances, such a plan will understandably be prioritized based on the overall needs of the township. Secondly, changes should be reflective of a variety of factors that require careful consideration. These include the history of such zoning, the significance of such changes to the community, the site-specific characteristics of the area in terms of historical and/or environmental preservation, ease of enforcement, and the spillover impact of such changes on the township as a whole. Lastly, and most importantly, in the time of COVID-19, social distancing prohibits face-to-face gatherings needed for community dialogue. Transparency and community input from neighbors is imperative to understanding and embracing change. Without cues from body language and tone of voice, written communication can be misinterpreted and misunderstood. Social media, Zoom meetings, and emails cannot adequately convey sentiments that deal with the quality of life in Radnor Township. With so much of our lives in flux, we should avoid issues that are lightning rods for divisiveness and contention. I appreciate your ongoing consideration of the important issues like the health and well-being of Radnor residents that face our township during this unsettled time. I'm going to mispronounce this, for which I apologize. Tim Eli writes, raising height allowance for residential properties to 36 from 30 feet. I am not in favor of this. However, I would like to hear more from residents about the impact on property values and quality, character, and future of the neighborhood. It would be helpful to have some community discussion regarding changes to the overlay. Not easy during these social distancing times, but the previous Garrett Hill planning was a wonderful community building experience. I know you gathered some input in walking the neighborhood. That might be a good start to a larger discussion. Allowing commercial outdoor dining from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. I am in favor of this. If we could have some sort of temporary order to determine if noise will impact nearby neighbors. I agree that we do need to do something to help businesses survive in COVID-19 times. Restricting student housing after a property undergoes a major renovation, quote, major renovation, end quote, will need to be legally defined. I would like to know more about this. What are your thoughts on how effective the current ordinances are that limit the distance among student housing? Generally speaking, the students that live on my street are not loud and are friendly. However, they rarely shovel their sidewalks, and there seem to be an awfully lot of them living in certain houses. Somewhat related, there have been a couple of instances where Villanova students have been disruptive walking down Garrett Avenue after exiting the bars in Garrett Hill. Thanks for receiving, processing, and passing on my comments. Joe Sumanth writes, forwarded message. Good evening, everyone. I am Sumanth Joseph, owner and resident of 117 Garrett Avenue since 2004 in Ward 7. I want to thank all the commissioners and particularly Sean Farhi for backing the residents of his ward. As a homeowner in the overlay district, I and others went unheard in making these basic but necessary changes to the overlay district in regards to raising the height restrictions and outdoor dining. It does not make sense as to why residents of Radnor who don't pay property taxes or are not homeowners or are affected by the overlay had total control over those who do live and own the overlay district, unless there was a motive for personal gain or interests. The restrictions imposed have left many of the homes dilapidated and not as valuable as a result. I also believe that outdoor dining in this climate would only be a positive and great way to invite good business and help to Garrett Hill thrive. This model has worked in Wayne as well as other neighboring townships. Thank you for your time and consideration and for simply not dismissing us, the homeowners. I believe the newly elected commissioners are very responsive and seek to balance local government while hearing the needs of the homeowners. Regards, Sumanth Joseph. Angelia Mitchell writes, for consideration, as a follow-up to my last week request to revisit the outside dining regulations in Garrett Hill, I am responding to some questions that have arisen from the community. With the expectation of reduced capacity when Radnor residents are allowed to open, accordingly, less parking spaces will be required to comply with zoning. At Flippin Bailey's, the proposed outdoor seating area would replace the existing 5 on-site parking spots immediately adjacent to the building. We would retain the current sidewalks for customers and neighbors. No changes to the remaining on-site parking would take place. At Garrett Hill Ale House, no change in parking will be necessary, but we will reduce interior seating in order to comply. We do have the best interest of the community in mind with this proposal and will work with the township to comply if allowed this relief. Best regards, Angie Mitchell, Jean Mitchell. Matt Rydell writes, and at 6:57, here is our statement for the public forum during the 5/18/2020 Board of Commissioners meeting. I've addressed the 3 topics in our statement, plus a few opinions pertaining to the topics brought up by the memo by the GHC. Ray, questions regarding proposals in early Memorial Day newsletter, close. From homeowners Matt and Meredith Rydell at 111 Garrett Avenue. We both grew up in Radnor Township and went to Radnor High School. Matt grew up in Wayne and Meredith grew up right on South Hythen Ave. We know this neighborhood intimately, and now, as owners in this neighborhood, would like to add a fresh perspective and opinion. We fully support the motion to raise the height restriction to 36 feet. Owners should not be so restricted when deciding to add to their homes, and given the chance to be able to improve their property value in any way just can't be denied. There are concerns that adding height, to all things considered, a very small sector of actual buildings, many of them residential, would increase traffic, parking, and noise issues. Garrett Hill has had, in my opinion, increased traffic over the past 10 years, ever since this overlay was created. Having height restriction has done nothing to solve this. We simply have more residents in Delaware County and the Bryn Mawr area than we did 10 years ago. Garrett Hill sits between and on two main roads, and Garrett Ave is used as a cut-through. Not to mention, we share our township with a major university. There are just more people in a small area, period. Adding a student housing restriction to any major renovation is creating a compromise. More students will bring traffic and more parking issues. Each student typically has their own car. For example, our college neighbors that we share a driveway with have 4 cars, not to mention daily visitors with their cars. For perspective, our houses are virtually identical. Compare this to the typical single family with an average of only 2 cars. We've not had any major issues with noise. It's a busy street, so there is generally daily noise pollution. And while we feel our VU neighbors have always been generally courteous and communicative about late night gatherings, however, wouldn't the reduction of student housing stifle some of the noise concerns in the neighborhood? Speaking to the other concerns of noise pollution regarding outdoor dining, the hours of 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. do not seem to be a huge risk of causing an extreme disruption to the residents, as some think it may. The amount of tables outside alone would be very minimal. We aren't talking about clearing out a concert at 11 p.m. We would simply be asking a very few patrons to move inside. And to the other concerns that our young college neighbors may cause issues in that regard, we will just say that our experience is that most have been courteous and know that if they want to continue their evening at the bar, they will comply with the rules. In these extremely worrisome and precarious times, we should only want to boost the few businesses we have left that make Garrett Hill so unique and charming by allowing them the freedom to serve their patrons outside, which we have all heard may become a new normal during this pandemic. Pandemic or not, having a bit of outdoor space to dine is always lovely and only adds to the ambiance and charm. If you look at the Haverford/Havertown neighborhoods with their restaurants like Brick and Brew thriving, you will notice their ability to utilize outdoor dining, and it is so nice to have that access during the spring and summer months. It's a completely different neighborhood than it was a decade ago, for the better. Besides the wonderful updates and additions to our parks, can I say the same about Garrett Hill? Not really. Lastly, there are concerns that this is not the time to be making changes to Garrett Hill ordinances. However, this short list of changes are here to benefit our residents and business owners to give a potential boost in a time of extreme financial insecurity. Let me also mention that the last time this overlay proposal was passed was during and in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis. While people were losing their homes, many residents were probably unwittingly faced with these restrictions at a time when no one was thinking about reconstruction. That alone isn't reason enough to reassess. In 2008, we graduated from Radnor High School, and now, years later, we are homeowners on Garrett Avenue. We are part of the turnover this neighborhood has seen over the last decade, and in 4 short weeks are expecting our first child. Congratulations, guys. We want to make sure changes continue to happen for the better and continue to keep Garrett Hill the great and charming community for our kids and generations to follow. Change and refresh needs to happen and to adapt to the growing community, and it is growing. We need to allow the freedom of our residents and business owners to make these positive changes. Sincerely, Matt and Meredith. That concludes public comment for the initial portion of the agenda. Moving on to the consent agenda. It only has 1 item. Is there anyone who wants to take disbursement review and approval off the consent agenda? Hearing none, I will move for the approval of the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to committee reports. 3A, motion to confirm the appointment of Robert V. Tate as Finance Director. I will so move. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any commissioner comment?
I'll say that I know Bob and he will make a wonderful choice. So
I will give you an early congratulations. I think you're going to be wonderful.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Hey, Bill, why do we need to do this right now? I think that a lot of the same issues with the comments on Sean's item are applicable. Again, this is a major appointment. Why don't we wait till we get back and have a regular meeting? What's driving this right now, this appointment?
Well, I mean, I'll start with just how critical having a full-time finance director is. Regardless of any external situations, having the full-time finance directors is important to the continuity of the administrative team. That coupled with the fact that we have a candidate as qualified as Mr. Tate, and someone who has been with us for 8 years, has already developed the relationships within the departments, within the business community, and the public that he's had a chance to come in contact with. Delaying it wouldn't add any value, to be perfectly honest. He's the right candidate for the job. He's got the experience, he's got the education, he's got the character, he's got all of the aspects that we would be looking for in the position. So there's really no value added by delaying the appointment. To be consistent with my appointment last month, in terms of compensation, we're proposing the 5% adjustment now, and then we'll come back when we're out of the emergency situation and can put some finality on on all of these different moving pieces in a public meeting in the Radnor Shire room. So we will double back and revisit it. But again, the timing is that we have the candidate, we have the open position. So my recommendation to the board is to proceed.
Again, I just think that the timing of it seems like it's not the best time to do this. As you say, Bob's been working for 8 years. Bob's been working full time, and it seems a little tone deaf when other people are getting laid off to be making these pay increases and promotions. And I think that we could talk about, instead of coming back later and doing a negotiation and terms for the contract and employment, we could do it all at once. So I don't see how this is a benefit right now. And, I don't even have any objection. It's just, again, this is the timing of it seems tone deaf in light of the struggles of many of our constituents. So
I believe this is Bill's, decision to make. If this is what he thinks needs to happen in the face of, the financial situation that Township is, we believe that we're going to be up against and
what do you mean?
Are currently up against.
What do you mean?
Rich, can you finish? Let me finish. I did not interrupt you.
No, I'm just asking you, what is the financial condition we're going to be up against?
Well, Rich, I think that we all know that we're going to be looking at some sort of, financial concerns with regards to the Act 511 taxes and things like that. So I think that
I agree with that 100%. So
okay,
again,
could you not interrupt me one more time, Rich?
I'm agreeing with you.
I am so happy that you're agreeing with me, but I did not interrupt you, and I would appreciate the same consideration. So I believe this is Bill's appointment to make. I had a long conversation with Bob. I think that he has his, finger on, the pulse of what's happening now. He has the institutional knowledge. Again, he and Bill have worked the finances of this township in a very successful way for the past, 8 years, Bill for longer. But, I think that this is a move that we need to make. I think we need that continuity. And I think that we need to have that position secured moving forward. We are going to need all the guidance that we can get in the next couple months. And I am in full support of this. And I think that a 5% pay increase in this moment is minimal. I do not think this is tone deaf, and nor do I think that this is related in any way to the concerns brought up in some of the public comment that we've already heard this evening. This is Bill's appointment to make, and I support it.
All right, are you done? As long as you're done, you made my point. We are going to be facing revenue shortfalls. We are going to be facing a lot of difficulties with the township as far as our taxpayers, our people being laid off, and we're going to be increasing and hiring new people in addition to the expensive new pension plan that you put in place last week. It is obvious, it's very tone deaf, and it should be discussed when people can come in and hear about it and not on a Zoom meeting. So it has everything to do with many complaints that went along with Sean's proposal here later this evening. It's tone deaf, even if we all agree on the person.
I'd
So
like
for
to
better or for,
step in. I'm just going to throw in my support for this appointment. I think that it is a personnel matter that was very well thought out. We've got the right person for the job. I do think we need leadership in this position now. And frankly, I again agree that we need to take care of our township staff who are working hard and extra, and 5% is so minimal for this step up to the leadership team. And yet I think Bob has been doing the work and deserves the title and the promotion to reflect what he's already doing. And Bob, you have my full support.
yeah, for better or for worse, the business of the township continues. We are not shut down. We are continuing to do work. Some of us are continuing to do far more work than we used to before, and we need to start figuring out quickly how we are going to divide up that work, given that we are down a person at the very top of the food chain from a couple of months back, and now other people are moving up to fill those spots. So the sooner we can do that, the better the services that we will provide to everyone. And those are services that a lot of our residents and at a remove, the businesses rely on as well. So to the extent that it makes a difference, and I'm not sure that perception should really drive reality in this instance, we need to provide those services to everyone. We can't just shirk our jobs for the sake of making it look nice. I don't think anybody's going to begrudge this promotion.
Thank you,
Damien,
Mr.
did I cut you
President. My comments are simply that I believe in reading the charter that this is the township manager's decision. So therefore, I fully support it, and I believe that we should move on it this evening. I too agree. The business of the township cannot stop. We cannot put all of this on hold. If we did, God forbid, when we come back to a meeting in the Radnor Shire room, it will go not until 11:30 at night. It'll go till 4:30 in the morning. So let's move on the business and let's keep it moving. My company is continuing to do business worldwide via Zoom. There's no reason that we can't continue to move things forward.
Again, you're making my point. We are continuing the business. Bob's been working and I've communicated with him. There's not an issue.
There's not an issue because it's Bill's decision.
This is a solution looking for a problem.
I'm at this point going to call the vote. I think that we have heard the issue, Rich, that you're raising. All in favor, say aye.
Is there
Aye.
public comment on that or not? Was there public comment?
Oh, yeah, there is no public comment on this.
Just wanna, okay, aye.
All in favor, nay. Oh, sorry. Hearing no nays, and then motion passes unanimously.
Abstain. Rich Booker abstains.
Okay, I assume, Rich, you have a financial conflict here, so we'll, I guess, note that. Moving on to item 3B, resolution number 2020-57, King of Prussia Eagle Road, Pine Tree Road intersection, awarding the civil engineering services contract to Associated Engineering Concepts in the amount of $51,000. I will so move. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Norsini, I know that we've talked about this intersection a fair amount. I assume that we are, I mean, it is what it says. We're awarding the civil engineering services contract.
Yes, Commissioner. So this is to get the project to the point where we have all our approved PennDOT permits and are able to go to bid to get construction done. So just for the commissioners that may have not been on the board when this came through, Eastern University, Cabrini University, and Radnor Township applied for a multimodal transportation fund grant. That grant was awarded. So the project cost is $1.8 million. The MTF fund grant proceeds are $1.3 million, which leaves a local match of $558,000, $558,419, split three ways with Cabrini, Eastern, and Radnor. So our share is $186,410. That $186,000 was funded in the general obligation bond. The contract before the board tonight is $51,000. So our share of that contract is $17,000. And just as an aside, Cabrini did quite a bit of the legwork and the preliminary plans for this project at their expense some time ago. So we also, between the grant and that work, we're getting a great bang for the buck. So this is just to award the contract to get the project moving so we can go to bid sometime this year.
Excellent. Is there any commissioner comment?
I have a comment. I have a question. Steve, you talked about this being worked on for some time. I look at these drawings, they're from 2011. And Bob first showed me this project in 2014 or 2015. Why has this been around for so long? And what is the cause of 8-year-old drawings finally coming up at this point?
Well, really, that's not the crux of the matter, Commissioner. The grant wasn't awarded till late 2018. We went through the process of the grant documents. So the plans very much are what they're going to be. They were submitted to PennDOT Highway Occupancy Group. We did receive comments. We're going to revise them to those comments. So I can't answer why this was done so many years ago, but the grant was awarded late 2018. Been working through this. So I don't know that it's germane to the issue at hand. Either way, this work would have to be done. I understand your question and your concern, but really this is just moving forward.
Well, my question is what happened between 2011 and 2014 that full construction documents were prepared and not moved on?
I was not involved in it in 2014, Commissioner Booker. I don't have an answer for that. I can try to find out.
Would it be possible that the township went for a grant that wasn't awarded at that time and then went again?
That could be, Commissioner Mulrooney. I do not have that information.
Are all the design parameters up to date?
Well, that's what the submission to PennDOT HOP department will do. So we will have to bring everything up to today and answer their comments and then hopefully move forward.
Okay, well, as I said, I'm against this project, and I would again propose that we not undertake it.
I've also consistently opposed this project, and especially right now, I think this $186,000 can go to other projects. You know, I'd rather see it go to sidewalks and resurfacing roads that we know all residents are in support of. So, you know, I drive this intersection twice a day. I don't see the need for it, and I think we have other projects that are higher priorities right now.
So
isn't this money in the bond, and we have to use it for this project?
It is money that was part of the bond. The board as a group can decide to redirect it. So that is within your power as a board. But when the bond documents were drafted and the ordinance was adopted to borrow the money, this project was identified and funded.
So I'll say that I've been taking both sides on this issue, but it looks like that this is going to pass. We did get the grant money. That's done. So this project is on the books, whether we like it or not. So I'll be voting in support of it.
Okay, is there any staff comment? Hearing none, there is no public comment. I will call the vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay.
Hey,
Motion passes 5-2. Moving on to item 3D, ordinance number 2020-11, introduction, amending the township zoning ordinance to provide setbacks for residential emergency generators and to provide regulations therefore. I will so move. Is there a second?
Second.
I am going to now move to table ordinance number 2020-11. The reason I'd like to do so is to the extent that it's not an emergency ordinance and it doesn't fit an immediate need within the township, I just want to stay away from passing ordinances as much as possible during the shutdown. I'm cautiously optimistic that we may be back in the township building at our next meeting in June, which would mean that we would be able to take this up again at the next meeting. So that's my motion to table. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion to table it.
Okay, I will then call the vote on the motion to table. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to resolution number 2020-59, award the capital lease financing for 3 public works vehicles previously approved by the Board of Commissioners to Bank Funding LLC at an interest rate of 1.850% for a term of 5 years. I will so move. Is there a second? I guess I should just ask, is it Mr. Norsini who is telling us about this?
I think we're going to let Mr. Tate run with this one.
Okay, Mr. Finance Director.
Thank you, Commissioner. My mic's on. Okay, good. The board previously, back on the first meeting in February, authorized the township to go out and purchase public works vehicles. Administration went out, received several bids. And what you have before you tonight is the proposal from Bank Funding LLC. Administration is seeking your we're recommending that you approve this legislation to purchase 2 public works sanitation packers and 1 dump truck. The sanitation vehicles are each made up of 3 separate parts: a chassis, a body, and a plow. And the dump truck comes with a plow. Total price is at $576,804.28. The administration's recommendation is that we enter into a 5-year capital lease with a $1 buyout at the end. And our debt service on this will be $120,814.97 per year over the 5-year term.
And if I could, just real quickly to add to that, during our budget discussions, you'll see in our fleet capital program specific to the fleet, you'll see that with the sanitation packers, rather than having to come up with the $200,000 out of pocket for each one. It was about 6-7 years ago, the township decided that getting into a capital lease rotation with these vehicles was more cost effective. It would allow us to rotate the fleet on a little bit more timely basis. We'll be paying for 5 years, but typically we'll get anywhere from 7 to 10 years of service on these vehicles. So we'll have years of useful life after the payment. And these, of course, again, referring back to the capital program, these are replacing 2 of our older vehicles in the fleet. And as you can imagine, with our garbage trucks, their wear and tear is pretty significant with the stops and the starts and all the different moving parts that are constantly in use every single day.
Bill, can you remind me, when you say we're retiring two, was it a negotiated trade-in? Are they off the road? What happens to the older ones?
So the older ones will be auctioned off. Either they'll be auctioned off, or if there's more value in a negotiated trade-in, we'll do one of those two options. But in any case, the proceeds are used to offset the cost of capital in the entire capital program.
Thank you.
Hey, Bill, in light of the interest rates that we are, or Bob, or both, in light of the interest rates that we have today at 0.6% on the 10-year Treasury, does a capital lease still make sense? And have you guys gone through that analysis?
Well, if we were, Commissioner, if we were to just on an all-out cash purchase, we're looking at greater cash flow right up front versus 1.85% over a 5-year term. We feel that's better conservation of capital today and spreading the payments out over a 5-year term. And it also, versus an operating lease, which would have been more expensive, and then no ownership at the end of the term. So the 5-year capital lease with a $1 buyout at 1.85%, we think is going to be the most favorable option.
As long as you can get the rate of return on the cash saved. But again, that's my question. Are you sure, even with these low interest rates, that this is still the way you want to go? We've never had in my lifetime, I don't know if you remember the interest rates this low. So I'm just want to double check to make sure that the buy option using our cash isn't better.
You mean an outright buy, full purchase price up front?
Or financing it at points, financing it at a lower rate, yeah.
Well, the other issue to consider here is we would have to go out and competitively get interest rates. No one has offered us a 0.6% 10-year Treasury for our borrowing. And then there's the cost of issuance that needs to be rolled into it too. So the other issue at play here is the timing of the purchase. There's a tight window with all of these trucks, and we experience the same thing on the police side with the vehicles, that orders need to be submitted within a certain window, otherwise you lose out for a year. For the sake of these 3 vehicles, this rate was competitively obtained through the bidding process. It's the rate that the market told us we can get on these terms. So we can be confident that this is the best rate we're going to get on a 5-year capital lease. And again, if we delay, we'll miss out potentially on the vehicles themselves. So while we may be able to hit the reset button and solicit 10-year treasuries and extend the debt service out longer, losing out on the vehicles themselves may prove to be more costly, keeping the fleet, lengthening the life of the fleet by a year, and extending the debt service out an additional 5 years.
Well, I guess I don't mean to extend the debt service. What I mean is that's the marker. A 5 years should be less. You know, paying what is the rate? One in the internal rate on the capital lease is 1.6. Did you say? 1.6 something?
Bob, you're muted.
I'm sorry, 1.85%.
1.8. So we could probably, I mean, if we could finance it ourselves, or we could finance and borrow the money when you get a chance, maybe you could get 0.5%, right, for 5 years. 0.5%.
How much?
I'm not seeing that. I'm involved in 2 borrowings right now with municipalities, and we're seeing rates between 2 and 2.5%. for a straight bank loan. So I think this number is better than what I'm seeing for basic borrowing.
Yeah, but Mary, we're a better credit than probably that one. All
No,
right, well, I mean, as long as you
there's-
guys look at it, I mean, as long as you guys, just seems a little high, that's in light of what the interest rates are, though. That's my question.
Bill, how much are we talking about again?
$500,000.
Well, the $500,000 on the purchase price. What we can do is we can run the numbers on, we can run the numbers through PFM. If the board's okay with that, we'll just, and do a quick look. If there's a material difference, in savings and it does not cause some significant delay in the purchase of the vehicles, we can report back on the board on that. I'm not sure that between 1.85 and whatever we're going to get is going to be material, or that it's even going to be lower. But sitting here right now, we have not asked the question, so we can ask the question.
Yeah, I think it's worth it to ask the question, because maybe even if we put that $500,000 out, then we could refinance that. And if we got 0.8, we save 1% on $500,000, and that helps pay for the stuff that we've been buying lately.
Yeah, if all those transactions happen without cost of issuance, there would be definite advantages there. But there's enough people with their hand in on those transactions that we've seen that it chews up savings real quick.
Well, yeah, some kind of bank loan, right? Some kind of private.
Yeah,
all right, whatever. I'm just raising it.
Just to be clear, like this rate was obtained through a bidding process, so it is what the market said on that day was going to be our best rate.
Is there any additional commissioner comment? Then is there any additional staff comment? There is no public comment, so I will call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Moving to item 4, reports of standing committees of the board. Do we have any committee reports? Hearing none, I will move to new business. Item 5A, Garrett Hill overlay zoning changes. Commissioner Farhi, this is up to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I heard a lot of comments, a public comment, and I want to thank everyone for their input. I will say that making these changes is nothing new. In October of 2019, while I was canvassing for my reelection, I spoke to neighbors about that lived in the height restrictive part of the Garrett Hill overlay, and about making these changes, and they were in favor of it. Then after I won my reelection in December, I clearly put this in a newsletter. I put this out on social media all over, so it's out in the public domain. I've spoken to neighbors outside the overlay. I've spoken to staff about it, the solicitor, and those obviously in it, which I believe harm their property values. On Friday, I walked through the overlay, and their sentiments are still the same, the people that live in the overlay. Garrett Hill, that overlay is unnecessarily restricted. It's unnecessarily restricted. It's a detriment to property values, homeowners' rights, and it makes one's greatest investment involved, their home, have an inequitable rate of return. I spoke to residents also that lived within 200 feet of Flippin' Bailey's and the Garrett Hill Ale House about the outdoor dining, and none of them had a major objection as well. So again, this is nothing new. This has been out there for months, 6 months, on the record since December. This is really, a lot of people are making a big deal out of this. This is about allowing 20 to 30 homes to increase the height of their house by 5 or 6 feet to the township standard of 36 or 35 feet. They don't want anything more. All they want is it just to be equitable. We may have to update parking too. There's next to no, even though Garrett Hill is zoned commercial, there's next to no businesses on Garrett Avenue. Yet, it's a business district that has permit parking. So no one's gonna even shop there if they see a permit parking only sign, because they're gonna think that they're gonna get towed. So there's a lot that needs to get changed and revamped as we go forward. Finally, I'll say that the outdoor dining, as Angie Mitchell, who owns Flippin' Bally's, as well as the Ale House, it's going to be maybe 6 tables, 24 seats. Again, it's pretty minor zoning. Now, getting to the point where this is not an emergency, I'm going to disagree. This is an emergency, and I will argue that we cannot wait. Homes are getting more and more dilapidated to the point of condemnation. And we've talked about condemnation in this board multiple times since I've stepped on about homes in that overlay that are dilapidated, that are falling down. I get calls, emails on a weekly basis from neighbors sending me pictures, dealing with the blight and the issues associated with vacancies, absentee landlord, and transient renters. Renovations take time, and we as a community can't wait anymore. Currently, we have 4 large vacancies in the Garrett Hill Business District. Garrett Hill Pizza, the adjoining shop next door, the old frame shop, as well as the locksmith. We don't have a lot of businesses in that little business area. So we have major issues going forward. Now, if we lose our anchors, which are Flippin' Valley and Garrett Hill Ale House, it will be catastrophic to both Radnor and Garrett Hill. Now, this isn't about people dying in the street, but really, don't kid yourself. This is an emergency, and I believe that Garrett Hill is on the brink of catastrophic collapse for both our residential side and our commercial side. So I understand that there's a lot of talk about people didn't know. It's been out there. I'm asking the board, I'm asking all you, that if you have any questions, let me know. But I would like staff to work with the solicitor in drafting a zoning ordinance that we can send to the Delco planning as well as our own planning and zoning and get feedback and go from there. Thanks.
So I'm hearing a motion to send this to the township solicitor for work in conjunction with staff members to draft an ordinance that would permit all of the things that you just discussed. Did I get that more or less right?
You're on mute.
Sean.
Okay, sorry. There needs to be input, again, from the neighbors that live in the overlay. Those that, if they want that need this overlay, that's fine. But we should also hear from staff and everyone. And I think that we need to come back, and I think we need to do this quickly. Businesses are dying. Homes are getting more and more dilapidated. And I think that we need to do this now. So, yeah, I'm in there for making those changes. That's what I have in mind. But anything else that can help Garrett Hill, help the business district, help those homes, help those in the overlay, I'm all for.
So then are you saying you want to hold a meeting where we invite members? I mean, you're saying you want input, but what do you want?
I mean, no, I'm what I want, that at least to we can send this ordinance now to the solicitor. They can write it, and then we can gather feedback from the residents after.
Wait,
Okay, so the
I'm
motion
confused.
would
Is
be
this a new ordinance, or are we amending the overlay? Like, are we doing a whole new ordinance? I don't exactly understand what you're asking for.
I mean, we can amend. That's gonna be up to the solicitor to decide. Whatever the best, whatever the best way to go about it, I think would make sense. I'm bringing up points, the logistics of how it gets done. I'll let that go up to the lawyer. But these are the changes, and these are why they need to be made.
So Sean, I guess some of my confusion is that you mentioned many different issues that you believe Garrett Hill is facing, and I'm not sure if it was your intention to have one issue address it all. Is it the overlay, and that will address businesses and residences, and and my understanding from our conversations before and some comments from the community we heard tonight is that the largest restriction is the height of the houses. So
That
I'm not
is.
sure how that's going to affect rentals and parking and the other issues that were raised.
I'm going to say
So I
underlying
guess
all of this is parking. Huh?
Well, some of it is
what the main
parking.
issue is that we're trying to get to. So
There's two issues. There's a commercial issue, a residential issue. Coupled with that, you can look at parking. This is what I believe. I believe that you have a lot of houses that, for lack of a better term, they're dilapidated, they're absentee. You have landlords that bleed it dry. As Mr. Rydell said in his email, he lives next to college kids. They should only have 2 cars there. They have 4 cars there. If we are able to raise the heights, make it more family friendly, you'll have less transient renters and you'll have less parking on the street. So when you have college kids that maybe should only have 2 or 3 per house and they have 4 or 5 and their boyfriends or girlfriends come over, you have many more cars than should be allowed. Garrett Hill and part of that neighborhood is permit parking. So even that, it's not being enforced. It's not getting the job done. I personally, again, would like to see on the residential side it become more family friendly. And again, I believe that if you give owners a reason to have their houses redeveloped for better or worse, and make them more family friendly, that's what's going to happen. You're not going to have, I don't think you're going to have an owner that is going to spend money to redevelop a house to have college kids come in and trash it. They're going to take a house, redevelop it, and hopefully they're going to put a family in there. Now, I heard from Mr. Barker, he said that it's the least restrictive area. And that's the most restrictive area. I'm going to disagree with that. You can't move laterally. There's really no side to the right or left of the house, and you can't really move forward because you're on the street or backwards. The only places where you can go is up. Parking has always been an issue, and that's obviously something that we can look at. Some of those houses, if they do get torn down, maybe you could put a driveway in there. Maybe you could put a carport in there. So there's other ways to address that issue, and I think putting families in there, as Mr. Rydell said, that maybe only have 1 or 2 cars, as opposed to 4 or 5, will definitely help alleviate parking. Now we're looking at that on the residential side. On the commercial side, we have, like I said, we have plenty of vacancies in the Garrett Hill Business District. The need for outdoor dining is important. We're not going to be adding seating to these restaurants, which is a concern, again, about parking. We're not going to be, there will be no sidewalk dining like in Wayne. This will all be on the private property of that owner, and it will be far away from the right-of-way or the sidewalk. In the case of Garrett Hill, and I've spoken to the owner, will be on the Williams side of the house, on their sidewalk that directly goes up against the side of the building that has a mural on it. Then there's a parking spot, which is probably about 8 or 9 feet. Then there's a sidewalk in the street. So it's not going to affect anyone that's walking by. You're having, I don't know, maybe 4 tables, 25 seats tops. It's a minor change. When we look at Flippin' Bailey's, there's a parking lot, pardon me, the Ale House. When we look at the Ale House, there's a parking lot, and then there's a little vegetable garden, and then there's the back entrance. And what they would do is take the area that's in that vegetable garden, which is a buffer between the parking lot and there's steps that go down before you walk into the back door, and you could put maybe 3 tables, definitely 2. It's going to be small. It's not going to be loud. And it's going to help these businesses be able to survive during these tough times. So again, how we get it done, I'm all open, but this has to change. This is an emergency.
Sean, it sounds to me like, there's some distinct issues that you think are problematic in that part of your ward. So, I mean, is this something that perhaps you would take to a town hall and have everybody say, what is the problem with Garrett Hill and how do we solve them? I mean, some is zoning, some is code, some is, managing, the enforcement of college apartments being too close together. Some is parking enforcement. It doesn't feel like you're bringing forth like the overlay doesn't, to me, sound like it's going to solve all the issues that you presented tonight. So would you think about starting with a community conversation and have people come and be heard about what they think the problems are and work together for solutions and bring in the right folks on whichever issue you're dealing with?
Yeah, no, so we are having community conversation. We are. We're having it here. We're having it online. We're having it, unfortunately, on social media and through email and on Zoom. But I'd rather have this done at a township meeting. Absolutely. Is changing some of the overlay going to cure all the parking woes in Garrett Hill? Absolutely not. But again, the people that I'm advocating for and I am suggesting that are wronged are the people that live in the overlay and who cannot build, if they wanted to, up on their houses. It is inequitable. It's as I said, it's one's greatest investment, and they're going to have a subpar rate of return on it. And these things take
Yeah,
time.
but see, what you're talking about the height of a house, and then you're also talking about outdoor dining. Like, to me, it's, you're dealing with too many issues in one conversation for anybody to
And
find a solution.
Let me answer that more. No,
Yeah.
it's a greater picture. More, you have issues on the residential side, and you have issues on the commercial side, and it all stems from the Garrett Hill overlay. It all stems from a very small area, maybe a 1,000-foot by 1,000-foot area, and it needs to get corrected. And to let the people that made these restrictions in the first place have their hand, I believe, to have their hand in it on it again, without having who got a grant and without having our solicitor look to make sure that it's updated, I think is problematic. It's people that live in that overlay. They should have the most property rights, and they should not have other people that live out of that zone telling them what they can do to their houses, period. So again, I will ask the board, I will ask the solicitor, what is the best then? If you're not happy with how this is being approached, fine, but I'll ask the solicitor, then what is, in your recommendation, then what is the best way to go about this?
Well, before we have Mary chime in, just a couple of comments. Number one, Bill and Peggy, how soon could we have a community development meeting and we could go through this list? Could we have something before our June 6th meeting?
Well, the difficulty in holding any meeting right now is going to be what kind of restrictions we have for the number of people in the room.
All right, understood. I think Sean's got a lot of issues here that are good issues that need to be reviewed and can be improved in the area. And that typically we would have a community development meeting, and in conjunction with a draft of an amended ordinance to look at. In this case, I would direct to Commissioner Larkin, this kind of item should have some basic outline of the issue. So even Sean's newsletter would have been helpful here, because I had no context on these issues that
Fortunately, you have Sean's email and telephone number, which could have solved that problem for you if you wanted to look into it.
Well, I mean, it should go in the meeting packet, and
maybe Sean can put you on his newsletter distribution list.
yeah, no, that's okay too. But just put it in the packet so we have some idea what he's looking for. But the issues he's referring to are all legitimate issues to be discussed, and Mary, I guess, and John Rice would need to go through the various portions of the ordinance that would be applicable and make adjustments, and then send a draft to us to review. But I guess they need a list of the items as well. So I don't know, Mary, if you've seen the items that are listed that Sean is referring to, that you have some sense of where we would even make the changes for review.
I have seen the list, and everything on the list that I've seen are changes that would be made in a zoning ordinance amendment, amending the overlay district. How you proceed with it's a policy decision, but if you start with the draft of the ordinance, it can focus the discussion to very specific issues and at least one person's proposal on how those issues are going to be handled. And then you can have public meetings, but you have an ordinance to focus the discussion.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question, Sean. So we tabled the generator issue a few minutes ago because we said that it was a non-emergency, ordinance and proposal, which I completely get. You keep using the term emergency throughout the discussion this evening, and I'm just wondering if you can explain for me why this is emergency in terms of timing, and it's something that can't wait until we reconvene.
Yeah, if you say let's wait till the next June meeting, we'll table it till then. If you're going to say that we need to wait 2 years,
Mhm.
then no, these businesses.
Understood. Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we table this to
When?
a later meeting.
Well, I mean, so that's the problem. If it's tabled to a later meeting, when is it tabled to?
To the
6
June, to the June 6th meeting.
Okay.
What, I don't even, I don't even,
There's
I
nothing.
don't understand what we're tabling. There's nothing to table. So,
You brought an
my,
issue that is clearly very important to a lot of people, and I
yeah.
would love to hear that, but you've not brought anything to sort of make a decision on. So I don't think, I don't know what we're tabling other than pushing off the discussion, which I don't think, Sean, you would want to do.
Well,
Sean, I think you need to go back to the community. You need to engage them. You can't just so easily set aside something that people worked so hard to pull together that was a community effort. And I understand there are new people there now, and I think that is where the conversation needs to happen. You need to get the people, everyone in the room, and I haven't heard that there aren't people willing to talk. I mean, some of the comments that we've been getting, there are people who say, well, yes, it was in 2008, and now this is a different time. And I think that it is a worthwhile conversation, and it is also something that will bring the community together. Garrett Hill is a neighborhood. The zoning is about the neighborhood, and you can't just cut out a whole part of the neighborhood and move forward, and because that is going to be divisive to your neighborhood. And I think that you need to bring, can you wait? If you need to bring everyone together, I agree with Rich, maybe it is a community development meeting, or, maybe it's something else. Maybe it's a combination of that and some people on Zoom or something like that. But you can't just summarily set this aside after everybody worked so hard on it. And I think it's really kind of inappropriate to do it in this setting. The other thing I wonder is, didn't we all just talk about last week having some sort of emergency, I think John called it, did he call it an emergency declaration? I forget what he called it, around outdoor dining. So didn't we talk about that in the concept of the entire township? I mean, I know Rich brought up the restaurants up on Radnor Chester Road. I know that there are other areas. It wasn't just about Wayne. So the idea of the outdoor dining seems like it's going to be dealt with. And Bill, do you have a meeting? Don't you have a meeting with people coming up or on Wednesday? Like, wouldn't Garrett Hill fit in under that? So in the immediate to the emergency, which I am not downplaying, you're right, for the restaurants, we've already said that. So couldn't that extend to Flippin' Bailey's and to the Owl House as well?
Well, hold on. Sorry, Bill. Let me just interrupt here. That's not the issue. The temporary dining isn't the issue. The issue.
You said it was.
Let me finish here. The issue is that if we go green and that and the temporary dining is done and this is still in the works, those businesses are still going to be suffering. We need to start working to get stuff on the books now. Period.
So you need to have a community meeting with the people in the community, Sean. I'm confused. Like what Maura is, I don't understand how raising the height of homes is going to all of a sudden miraculously cure the dilapidation that you say exists over there. And I'm not doubting that. It's your ward, so I'm not doubting it. If you're getting those concerns, I don't understand. Are you saying that then developers will come in, they will buy those homes and turn them over? But what about the people that live there? Like, I guess I'm kind of confused.
Lisa Hunter, so people that live there, eventually people have to sell their homes. That's number one. People will buy them. There needs to be turnover. Turnover to a certain extent is good. Having Toll Brothers buy every house on that block is not. There's a balance, but we have not seen much development since the overlay. We haven't seen anything since that overlay. We saw one house. So how is that good? No, let me finish. So if you're able to take a house that's falling down and dilapidated, maybe it's vacant, maybe it's not, maybe it has, as Rydell said, 10 college kids living there, transients living there, and they fix it and it's nicer, and they put a family in there, because 9 times out of 10 a builder is not going to spend a lot of money to rehab a home to try to sell it to college as a college rental. And I do have something, if you saw what I put in my newsletter, that we should be more restrictive on college rentals if possible. So what I would
Well,
say,
maybe we start with that, because then as people do buy to redevelop, they see that it's restrictive and they're not going to buy it to rent it out to college students.
it's a package thing. We'd be here forever, and these businesses are hurting, as they all are over, and the houses are going to get more and more and more dilapidated. So sure, we can go kick this around, have community meetings, have everyone have their opinion, and in 6 months we'll be nowhere. And I am almost positive with that.
So there has been a motion. Thus far, I have not heard a second. I want to kind of bring us back to the parliamentary procedure on this, because we've wandered a little bit and we've been talking for a while on this issue. Is there a second to send the issues that Sean has raised to the solicitor to draft an ordinance, which would later come back to us for further steps?
Well, then that's the first I heard of that. I think Lisa was correct when she said that we didn't really have anything to table. We could reschedule the discussion for next meeting and outline the changes to be sent to the solicitor.
I agree. I think we're one step behind. I think that what we need is for Sean to go and put some thought into what is actually being asked for, and maybe have a conversation with the solicitor so that you bring forward something that we can make a decision on, whether it's.
I said there's three things. Sure, no.
That's all fine, but right now there's a pending motion, and I'm just asking if there is a second. You guys can think that the motion is premature. You guys can think that we need to do something different once we get it to the solicitor, but we have a pending motion, and I'm just looking for a second.
There's one point of order I would like to say with more, and then we can do the vote. So there are things on the table. It's for starters, three things: raising the height from 30 to 35 or 36 feet, allowing limited outdoor dining, and as well as looking at restricting further student rentals. If we want to look at parking issues from there, then that's fine, as the solicitor and the engineer and everyone goes through. So there are things on the table. With that, Jack, you can go ahead and do your motion now.
Okay, so
Well, now I'm
looking for a
hearing that there are
second.
4 issues on the table. Do we have to table one at a time?
No,
Like, it's just getting more convoluted.
It was sent to you. We had a long.
You did, but I thought you were going to come forward with something, and you've come forward with a conversation that isn't.
I came forward with raising the height restrictions in that overlay for the reasons that I told you and the reasons that I said. They've been consistent. Allowing outdoor dining not on a temporary basis, but on a permanent basis to help those businesses so we don't have any more vacancies. And to help with the parking issue, which is going to be the major concern when it comes to both the residential as well as the commercial, to look at limiting or restricting student housing even more. We did that in the 133 or 131, 133 house. I was in the settlement agreement, and that will help with parking. And it's not a one and done issue. There are multiple issues that all relate and correlate around each other. So
and those are all things that exist within the overlay to be addressed.
Correct.
So, Mr. President, did we have any draft resolution in the packet?
No.
So I mean, and this happened last week too, and we allowed it to go through. It would, if we're gonna have resolutions that we're voting on, I would like to have something in the packet so I know and I can make sure that those issues are looked into before we get to a vote. So right now I'm voting on something I hadn't looked at all week.
Fine.
Well, I haven't heard a second. Has there been a second?
No, there hasn't been a second, so we're probably not going to end up voting on this. This is the last call for a second, and then I'm moving on.
So what's going to wind up happening? We're not talking about this, or can we table it till next meeting?
So we don't have anything to
tabling. I
table
think
at the
you have to come
moment.
back with something more specific.
Then I'll come back with something at the okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can bring it back at the next meeting. It's just at the moment, this doesn't have a second. Moving on to item 5B, commercial marijuana restrictions, requested by Commissioner Farhi. Sean, this is you.
Again, so when we look at what happened with the medical marijuana, we didn't have anything on the books. I personally, as I said at the meeting, I don't have a problem with medicinal marijuana, like many people in the community. I think recreational marijuana may be a problem. So I would, again, ask the solicitor to look at, and you got my recommendations. Well, if they're not in the packet, I will put them in the packet next time. But defining medical marijuana and the usage, so if things do become recreational, we have a footprint and we're being proactive later on. But again, because there's nothing that was put in the packet, although I did put my, what I believe should be done, we should table this until next meeting. So I will make a motion to table this until next meeting.
I will second the motion. I guess all in favor? I mean, really, we haven't moved it and seconded it, so there's not really much to table. You can bring it back at the next meeting if you'd like to.
I will bring it back, but this stuff should have been in the packet.
Well, to further the comments of somebody in public discourse, public discussion, why are we discussing something that is prospective in terms of laws that are not on the books in the state of Pennsylvania?
Well, they're not on the books now, and I believe that we should be proactive. Marijuana on a federal level is illegal. On a state level, it is legal. So you have two different agencies, I'll argue more, saying two different things. So if recreational does become legal on a state level, but not a federal level, we should have something in the books, and we should be proactive, and we should.
But again, recreational marijuana currently is. It's not legal in the state of Pennsylvania.
I want to be proactive when it comes to what happens if recreational marijuana does become legal. For instance, and that's why I brought up the safe injection sites. Okay, are they legal? I don't know. Did it happen in Philly? Yes, but is it legal on the books? States and federal, they're not. There's two different conversations, and there are two different laws that are being passed.
John's concern is that there's going to be a state law that permits recreational marijuana, and then in advance of our ability to get our act together and legislate the location that it can be put in the township, some developer would try and put in a recreational marijuana facility, which makes sense to me. But the problem is, of course, we're going to be completely precluded. There's no universe in which recreational marijuana will not be a field that is wholly occupied by the state and federal regulators, to the extent the feds are involved at all.
So we're back to the abortion discussion, basically. Why are we discussing something that is regulated on federal and state level and not regulated by Radnor Township?
It's
a waste. It's a waste of this board's time. It's a waste of staff time. It's a waste of public discourse.
It's got nothing to do with the abortion issue, and Radnor has the medical center here, which we made legal. But Sean's point on the medical marijuana is understood. What I would argue is that by us not having any legislation on this, we send the message that this is not something that we want. The way that we are sure to get marijuana, both medical and if it ever becomes legal recreational, is to set up legislation now, and that will mean people will say, okay, look, we can go to Radnor. The message that we have right now is that we will have opposition, and that's generally understood in the industry. Without any legislation, they expect us to oppose them, and I think that we should leave it like that. If marijuana is not legal federally, and I think we send the strongest message that's not something we're interested in by not even having any legislation on the books at this point. That sends a stronger signal that it's not something we're interested in.
Okay, so I need a motion for something, and then I need a second. Moving on to item 5C, ban safe injection sites anywhere in Radnor Township.
Same thing.
Agreed.
It's the same thing. I mean,
All right, I second that. That I understand. Ban safe injection sites anywhere in Radnor Township. Second.
Fine. It speaks for itself. They're doing it in Philadelphia. It's probably not legal there. The neighbors don't want it, and by the time it goes in their neighborhood, it's too late. So you need to be proactive. You need to put something on the books. Or at least have something that you can claim. It can't be done in the form of a resolution. We have a resolution not to have slop parlors in here, but it doesn't mean anything. If a slop parlor wants to come in here, they're welcome to do that. So, but I will argue that heroin is the drug itself is illegal, but to allow people to do it in a legal fashion has no place in Radnor, and I don't want it here. And again, you need to be proactive. So you're either for safe injection sites, or really you're not. And I don't want them in Radnor. So that's my opinion.
Right now, there is not a safe injection site in the United States of America.
How about Philadelphia?
No, there aren't. They tried to put one in Philadelphia. The federal court, the district court, ruled that it was not an illegal use. The U.S. Attorney General's office fought them, promised to appeal to the Third Circuit, and somewhere within days of the federal court decision, the Safe House dropped its proposal, and the landlord announced that the lease had been canceled. You can read between the lines in the involvement of the federal government on that, but there is not one single safe injection site in America. I don't know that it's a great idea to pin a bullseye on your chest by announcing that you're opposed to it.
Well, I think that if you don't do it, then you're saying that you have no opinion on it. And I'm opposed to it. And my residents and my constituents are opposed to it.
So Sean, you and I had the conversation, I think both were around the marijuana and the safe injection site, is that I caution us to be the not in my backyard kind of township, especially when these aren't even laws on the books yet and they haven't been fully vetted. And, you know, I would suggest, you know, we can keep an eye on it and, you know, have some public discourse around it when it comes there, but to just start saying, you know, no, nothing will come here. You know, if the laws change and public opinion changes, you know, I'd like to be open to talking about it.
So I would disagree with that. I don't want things in my backyard, and my residents don't want things in their backyard. And I think that you need to fight to preserve your neighborhoods. That's the whole thing with the whole Garrett Hill overlay, and I will be bringing that back. You need to fight for your neighborhoods and to keep them up to a certain standard and quality. And that's what this back and forth and with the neighbors. But we both want the best things for our neighborhoods, whether it's in the Garrett Hill overlay or not. Now, when it gets back to a safe injection site, what you're telling me is, well, let's have a not in my backyard approach. But if it happens, then it's okay. I'm going to tell you it's not okay. There are things that are not okay in my backyard. And a safe injection site is one of them. And when the federal government says one thing, but Philadelphia, which is a stone's throw away, says something else, if it happens, it's gonna be here, and it's gonna be right around the corner. And if somehow it can get, and I don't wanna bring up the whole abortion thing. Abortion is illegal. Right now, the question of whether a safe injection site is, I don't know, because
Well, yeah, that's the other thing, Shauna. If you can bring something forward, I would hope that you would know what the law is before you start trying to regulate or
and we should be
an ordinance or whatever. I think you don't even know what the law is.
yes, the law
Meeting
law
from a solicitor rather than doing your research. So I would ask you to please come better informed about the whole issue before you start trying to regulate something that you don't understand what it is.
Maura, I understand what it is, and I understand that you need to be proactive. You may not have a problem, and it sounds to me, and from our conversation, you don't have a problem with the safe injection site. I do, and
I haven't had anybody propose one and understand what it would entail.
I don't know.
So I'm not saying I want one or don't want one, but I'm not ready to have this conversation when it's not even.
I am ready to.
Hearing there's not even one in the entire United States.
What I would suggest, this is something that maybe it would work with a resolution, that we could pass a resolution that this board does not condone safe injection sites and is not interested in having them in Radnor Township without it actually being an ordinance. And I think that sends the message. But Sean has a point, because this is an issue that is current. And if you saw John Ricciuti and Jill Fritchie's video about Kensington and the heroin use that's open and on the streets, it's something that's a little bit more than just a theoretical possibility. It is something that's close, and it is something that this board should make known its views on. I think it's very bad that what is allowed to happen in Kensington. We should never have open heroin people injecting heroin.
I will be in favor of that resolution that we should not allow illegal heroin use on our library front steps like happens in Kensington. That I would support.
What's the difference?
So-
Great.
It is
There's a big difference. Come on.
it is a current issue, and I have no problem expressing that this is not something that I think this board of commissioners should make clear their view on it. I'm clearly in agreement with Commissioner Fari that we ban safe injection sites anywhere in Radnor.
I'll second that.
All right. Well, I'm not. I'm reluctant to vote on non-binding senses of the board. Again, let's get back to real business and fix the roads and resurface and fix potholes, which residents want to see tomorrow.
Sure, it'll be real business when you have to fix.
I'll second that.
Trying to stop a safe injection site in your neighborhood. That'll be real business.
So is there any staff comment?
Just in terms of procedural type of question, and Sean, forgive me if I'm a little off here, but I think part of what was being asked here was if there's going to be an investment of either staff time or solicitor time looking into any of these issues, direction from the board would be helpful to know if the work and the time incurred was something that the majority of the board was in favor of. So while there's nothing specifically included in the packet, just understanding if from a staff's perspective, the board would like us to proceed in some way, that would be helpful. Or if we just wait till the next meeting and have a better understanding, then we go from there.
Sorry, Sean.
No, go ahead, Mary.
I was going to suggest this is the kind of issue that I think John would prefer to advise you on in executive session before you chose a direction. Is not necessarily a discussion that we would like to get into detail with on a public meeting, and then you can engage in your public discourse once we laid the ground rules in executive session.
Okay. Fair enough. And then again, I'll bring all this stuff back at the next meeting, whether it's in June or whenever. And this safe injection site can wait. There's nothing pressing on it. But getting back to the issue with the Garrett Hill overlay, I'll bring it back at the next meeting. That's fine. So we can table this or do what you want.
I'm hearing that the motion has been withdrawn. I'm going to move on to item 5D. Board vote to immediately open Radnor Township playgrounds for public use, and directing OEM to provide applicable safety guidelines for the public to follow, close, and directing the director of Radnor Township Recreation and Community Programming Department to provide an in-person children's summer camp for children of the township, and directing the OEM to provide applicable safety guidelines for the camp, close. These actions are to be undertaken in accordance with the Radnor Home Rule Charter. Commissioner Booker, this is you.
Yes, these items stem from the ongoing closures that we face with respect to COVID-19 and the governor's executive orders. First of all, opening the playgrounds. I would like to have this board open the playgrounds that are public playgrounds for public use. The fact of the matter is that we are not stopping the kids from going outside and going to playgrounds. They're playing in the street. They're playing in private playgrounds and other areas, and that we should allow our playgrounds to be used as long as our Office of Emergency Management provides some guidelines for that they can follow and the police can enforce. Secondarily, and in conjunction with that, is this plans for summer camp. Tammy had sent a memo some days ago about plans for the summer camp, indicating that there was uncertainty as to whether the well-loved and very well-used Radnor Township Summer Camp is an in-person camp this year. And this instruction would be, again, that we do in fact have an in-person camp similar to as what we provided in prior years, and direct Tammy to undertake and to complete that, working in conjunction with the OEM to provide safety standards. I call this the Radnor Parents and Kids Support Act. And what we need is we need to provide these facilities for our children and get the kids out of the house and provide relief and some additional time and some additional sanity and normalcy for our residents in Radnor who are parents and have children that they've been dealing with for weeks and weeks, 8 weeks or more at home. This is something that we need to undertake immediately, and it goes along with opening the township. Furthermore, if people say, well, we would like to do it, but the governor says we can't, our home rule charter, I believe, provides us the authority to act unless specifically required not to by statute. I do have a memo that provides a basis that would support our taking action, even if it's deemed to be outside of the governor's executive order under our home rule charter. So I believe we can undertake these actions. I believe they're necessary. Children are generally not affected by COVID-19, and they are in such need of this stimulation and outdoor activity that it is critical to the township and to the parents and children in the township that we provide this to the extent that we can. And in this case, camp by the government is probably best able to address these needs rather than a private camp. And so I would ask that this board vote to open the playgrounds and direct Tammy to put on an in-person camp so that it's clear that we will be providing camp again this year.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it just so we can have the discussion.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone want to discuss this?
I'd like to hear from our Office of Emergency Management and from Tammy on this. I mean, I've heard a lot about being consistent and inconsistent in our decision-making around these issues. And I believe what has been consistent is that we are looking to our Office of Emergency Management and our staff to guide us on this. So that's what I'd like to hear from.
I'd be
If
interested
possible,
in seeing, I'm sorry, Bill.
yeah, just if possible, procedurally, can we split this up into two different motions? Because there's two very different things being asked here. One would be opening up the playgrounds. That's one request. The second one, getting into the detail of providing specific, or not just providing a camp, but the means or the methods by which we provide it is something very different. Can we entertain these separately?
Well, Bill, I would just disagree with that. I think one is opening the playgrounds, and I agree that's a separate and distinct issue, but the second is not provide, it's directing Tammy to provide it. And again, it was raised by Tammy, and she sent a memo to us indicating she's working on it and working on evaluating what would be the plan. As you know, we always have a camp every year. Radnor, many people in Radnor rely on that camp, and it's an integral part of these kids' summer. So rather than have it be a nebulous or a under consideration thing, I want this board to merely make it clear to you and to Tammy that we want to have an in-person camp. That's all I'm asking for. So I want these to be together. I want these to be together.
That's not what the motion says. It doesn't say I would like it or I would want it or the board wants it. It's do it.
Yeah, it's to provide it. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, it's true.
And we may learn that actually providing it is impossible without a location. But
Well, then we cross that bridge when we come to it, though.
I think it would be more, I think it'd be beneficial to discuss these two issues separate. If we could, just talk about the fields or the park equipment first, because I think the materials is going to be a little different than what Tammy gets into on the camp side.
Well, it's Rich's motion. He doesn't want to divide it up, but we can certainly address the issues separately.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill. Address the issues separately. Help me to understand.
Yeah, so, well, when it comes to the issue of opening up the playgrounds and the various park facilities, the one thing that we've had a number of discussions on during these Zoom meetings over the last 2 months is our goal, and I'll start this, and then Chris, you can fill in the blanks. But our goal being to, instead of Radnor Township trying to be the subject matter experts on COVID-19, the spread of the virus, how it impacts humans, it was instead to follow the guidance that we're seeing from our county, state, and federal leaders on the issue. And we really have done that. I know there's people on both sides of the fence with regards to the parks and trails being open, or whether they should be open or closed. But it seems pretty unanimous across the board that any of these facilities and the actual playground structures should remain closed. Even amongst those people who agree that the parks should be open. Obviously, the people who feel like the parks should be closed are going to agree that these should be closed as well. The problem is we don't have specific guidance from the state that says yes or no. So what we've leaned on are the decisions and the actions being taken by our peers in other municipalities, as well as the county. The one thing that's been made clear during the entire stay-at-home order was the importance of getting outside, of recreating, of enjoying the outdoors as a means to mitigate against being locked at home. So when the decision was made to reopen the parks and trails, that was one of the primary goals that we were looking to achieve, is to give our residents the opportunity to enjoy the park and trail assets we have here in Radnor. Now, as the board knows, we've got one particular site that is a lightning rod for lots of activity, but by and large, all of the other areas have remained relatively controlled in terms of the people using it. Obviously, on the nicer days, more and more people use it. But the messaging back to our police department has been that folks are on the trail, and in some of the larger areas are socially distanced and behaving. So again, what we have tried to do in terms of decision making is stick to the guidance from the higher levels of health and government and not go out on our own. And so as it pertains to the playground and the facilities at the parks, we're keeping those closed will remain consistent with our peers here, our neighbors regionally, as well as throughout the state in terms of keeping those things closed.
All right, and I understand, Bill. Again, I am asking that we go out on our own, that we open these, and that we develop the methodologies that we believe are safe. And the reason being is because the kids and the parents are out at other playgrounds, private playgrounds, in the streets, getting together. There is no change. So instead of allowing them to use the public facilities that they paid for, they are now trespassing in some cases on private facilities where they shouldn't be, or playing in streets. And in other words, they still are doing it. They are doing it less safely than they would be if we would allow them to use the facilities that they paid for. And I am asking that we take that and go beyond what everyone else is doing.
I'd like to just let you know, I live right next door to a playground, immediately next door to my house, a little tot lot in the middle of the block. It's got 4 major pieces of equipment. It's about 300 square feet, and I did a quick head count of the school-age children on our block. We have 18 kids who jam into that park when we're not under a pandemic. I mean, the park is active and the parents are out and the kids are out and it's jam-packed, and there's nothing else to do in that park but get on the equipment. And I know from all of the science that I have been reading up on is that it's the surfaces, the high-touch areas that are the dangerous aspects. So having open spaces is one thing, but when you look at the size of the playground that I live next to and the amount of children who have been very well behaved, staying out of it, playing in their driveways, sticking to their sibling groups and their family units, you know, it's been working and it's kept those children and their families safe. And I appreciate that the township has close that off. And, you know, it breaks my heart that the kids can't be in there right now, but right now it's not the safe place for them. And the families in my neighborhood are managing that. And they're taking their kids to the trail, or I don't know, you know, how they're blown off steam, but it's not been a problem. It's not been a problem that it's closed because they recognize that it's for the safety of their own children and their own families. I'm going to disagree.
I would disagree.
I'm going to vote absolutely no on opening playgrounds.
It has, people have.
Is there anybody else who would like to discuss this? We've heard.
It is a problem for the kids. And kids are not affected by, generally not
Commissioner
affected
Booker, we
by
need to
COVID.
make some airspace for other people to
Rich,
discuss.
your argument falls down when you start professing scientific knowledge and you know, the stuff. Let's leave that to the doctors and our OEM to determine what the
Doctors will
science
agree.
is.
Doctors agree. Children are generally not affected.
Yes, but they're carriers, Rich. They're
Okay, well,
carriers.
that's a
Or
different
when they
issue.
are infected, a child was quoted today to say he felt like he was injected by fire, a 9-year-old. So when they do get affected by it, it's pretty awful. It may not have killed that child, but that's what I read, a quote today, injected by fire.
Let me throw my 2 cents in here. Rich, I want to agree with you that, and it's tough. I mean, I have a 4-year-old, I have a 4.5-year-old, and there's only so much we can do. And we go to Clemacrone Park every day, and I see this big, beautiful playground, and we cannot use it, and none of the neighbors can use it too. But I am worried about cleaning it, and as Maura said, we are carriers as well. And I also worry about the liability. If one of our parks is ground zero and someone passes, that's going to be terrible. So that's just hard for me just on the health side. On the political side, this is an issue of science. I know that you're well-versed, you've done your research, but I want to put but I'm not a doctor, you're not a doctor. Even if we were, I want a team of experts, which is our emergency management team, to look at this, to give their opinion, and, you know, to a lesser extent, keep it out of the commissioners, not make it political, and let the experts and those that that deal with science make the decision. Because if anything happens, you know, terrible to a child, it would just be terrible if this became a political issue. This is an issue for, you know, people that are involved in health and safety and the welfare of the citizens. But
Well,
I do feel
I have that in the request for the vote. OEM would provide. So if it's one family at a time at the playgrounds, if it's cleaning it every hour, whatever it is, let's figure out what we need to feel comfortable, and let's do it.
Is there any commissioner who has comment?
But I think they already have decided what we should do, and we are doing it. We opened the trails and the open parks, and we've closed anything with equipment and playgrounds. So they already made that decision, and we're following it.
Right. So I'm suggesting that we overturn.
You just want them to make a different decision.
No, I want us to make the decision. It's our decision. We are the people that are elected. we can
They're the
direct them.
experts that we're relying on, and they made
That's
that
right. And
decision
we
on
will,
what
we will rely on them and have them provide what they think they need. But we give them the direction to open them. That's within our purview. And
That's not relying on their direction. They've given their direction. Their
Guys, we
direction
got
is they
two more
remain
items on
closed.
the agenda after this that we
Hey,
need
Bill.
to get to, and we have public comment. So is there
All right.
anything else that the commissioners want to talk about?
Yeah, Mr. President, I just have a couple questions. Bill, how many cases do we have in Radnor Township?
I think we're at about 153 or 159.
And what's the changeover since May 11th?
May 11th, it was 108. So yeah, May 11th, it was 108. Today it's 159. You have to asterisk it a little bit in that what we've learned throughout this this entire pandemic is that the information that comes from the county site is subject to occasional reconciliation, I think is the word that they use, or they get mass testing results back from a center that may require a lot of testing. So what we've learned with a couple of the jumps over that time period is that there were testing results that were returned from specific sites where they had a higher number of cases.
So Rich, to that point, I don't have good. I don't have confidence in the numbers I've seen to even entertain the idea of opening up any more of the parks. And I mean, the playground should be the last thing to open up because of some of the issues that were talked about. I mean, look at every township. You can't clean that equipment properly and have kids, just a revolving door of kids jumping on the same area, on the same piece of equipment. And I also don't have the demographics behind those numbers to make the decision to see who's being impacted by this virus. So for those two reasons, I think it'd be an unwise decision to open up all parts of the parks, particularly the playgrounds and hard playing surfaces. Rich, what I will say is, we have guidelines on a lot of these open spaces. No more than 10 plus people gathering in a group. No organized sporting events taking place. Well, that is taking place. I've seen it firsthand. And so my point is, if we're allowing that to happen and we're not shutting it down, we should just open it up. I mean, we've got to do one or the other. We've either got to enforce the rules that we've set, or we just have to open that park to everybody and allow it to happen.
I appreciate that point. And again, the children and the parents are finding other places. It's not like they don't go to a playground. They go to another playground. They go to the street. They go to their other places where they gather, parking lots, etc., that are less safe. Again, we can provide something that is safer than what they actually are doing. And that's what I'm appealing to this board for.
Well, I think we just have a disagreement on what we consider safer. And we can only put so many guidelines and suggestions out to the public. I mean, they're going to do, at the end of the day, they're going to make the final decision. But if they can't get to a playground and it's taped off and prohibited, then, I feel like we've done our job as commissioners to protect the community.
But when they go to the private playground and do the same thing with no cleanliness, with no oversight, with no cleaning, with no requirements.
What is a private playground?
There are
a private playground.
There's one at my church. There's one at the RUMC church.
Yeah, they're church and other facilities. Yeah.
Well, that's their choice.
So the parents
And that's up to those churches
well.
to, those institutions to patrol that. What we're talking about is public parks. We're not talking about institutional playgrounds.
But again, they
private ones. We don't have jurisdiction over those.
They don't monitor
jurisdiction over those. The governor has handed down orders about the number of people to gather, and that applies to private playgrounds, whether it's at a church. But we get to make decisions about the public parks that we are responsible for.
But again, the people, the churches don't monitor them. They don't enforce anything, and the people still go. We're not stopping that from happening. And
Yeah, but Rich, you're making the argument that there should be no laws because people violate them. I mean, that's not who we are. We're a board of commissioners. They believe in the rule of law. I would
I'm not
hope.
making any such
But
law. I'm not,
there shouldn't be
I'm saying,
there shouldn't be a speed limit because people speed anyway.
no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's, the people are out there doing it. We are not enforcing, as Jake just said, we're not enforcing the requirements strictly even in the parks and the fields, but
Bill,
this is something that's
can you speak to
necessary.
enforcement.
We should put rules down and enforce them, and we should open up the playgrounds and enforce the rules that the OEM comes up with.
Okay, we all know where we stand on this. I'm going to call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Wait,
All
what about
opposed,
the
nay.
what about the second piece?
You made one motion, you refused to break them
No,
up. We've been talking about
Bill,
this for too long.
Bill wanted to talk about the Tammy. Go
Guys,
ahead,
we've
Bill.
already started calling the vote. All opposed, nay.
No,
Nay.
we're gonna,
Motion fails 6-1.
Bill, you were gonna
Jake,
talk
you
about
had
Tammy.
something that you wanted to discuss.
Bill, you
Thanks,
said you were
Mr. President, thank you. I just want, Bill, could you update us on the Memorial Day parade situation?
Yeah, I'll tee it up and then let Tammy give you the details. But just to say and thank Tammy and Kevin Gallagher for stepping in and working with the parade committee the way they have to come up with something alternative than what we're used to. So I think normally, given the years that we've enjoyed this parade, it goes off without a hitch. But this year, given the circumstances, there was quite a bit of effort put into what was necessary to honor those that we're honoring on Memorial Day, but at the same time, try to stay as safe as possible. So Tammy, I'll let you fill in the details, but I wanted to make sure that the board and the public was aware of the work that you and Kevin did to help out here. And you're muted.
Tammy,
You're on mute.
You're still muted.
she can't get off mute.
Oh.
Jack, can you help her?
we need to have one of the sign.
Yeah.
The host
There she is.
muted me.
There you are.
It told me the host had muted me, so I guess
Sorry
I'm not
about
allowed
that.
to talk. That's all right.
When I'm going like this is because I'm trying to figure out how to unmute people generally.
That's okay. No problem. Thank you, Bill. I appreciate you teeing that up. Well, I have to thank Marty Costello, of course, and Neil Fulton as part of the parade committee, because they, as always, are the brains behind everything relative to Memorial Day. So unfortunately, Marty couldn't be here, to talk with you guys as he does usually each year. So unfortunately, you have me. So on Monday, May 25th, there are still plans to have a ceremony. Obviously, the traditional parade will not be taking place. But what has been decided is that there will be a very small gathering of just a select group of leaders from each of the respective American Legion posts, 418 and 668, obviously led by Marty and a bunch of group of veterans there. With regards to the ceremony, it will include traditional reading of the names of the 118 Radnor citizens who have fallen in the wars of our nation. So that will be a big part of it. It will start at 12 o'clock. And citizens are welcome to drive by the memorial that morning if they want to give a salute or stop by and just say a quick hello, drop flowers at the memorial. They're more than welcome to do that. It's not being promoted as an event for those to attend, but rather just to drive past the memorial. However, I do want to extend the invitation to the commissioners that wish to attend. They're more than welcome to come. Of course, the expectation will be that everyone is social distancing and of course, following those policies and those guidelines that have been set forth to try and keep those distances. The event will be televised later after the ceremony. Mainline Network, which is formerly Radnor Studio 21, is going to film it and rebroadcast it, so it will be available for everybody to take a look at it later in the day on the respective Verizon and Comcast channels. 21, I believe, is what those are shown on. So although it won't be a traditional parade, I know they are still planning to gather, and of course, in the spirit of Memorial Day, have the remembrance that is respected that day.
So Tammy, what are the issues with camp?
Nope.
Well,
We're done.
No. You can't just shut down discussion. You never gave me a
Stop it. Now, going back to the issue of the Memorial Day parade, does anybody else have any questions about the Memorial Day parade? Hearing none, I will move on to old business. Do we have any old business?
Mr. President,
Yeah.
if I could just bring up one item, just for old business. Just real quickly with regard to the Public Works Director position, we announced the vacancy and started advertising for that. I just want to be clear that Steve McMillan is still here with the township. He was nice enough to give us roughly 5 months advance notice of his retirement. So Steve will be with us through the end of August, but we've advertised for the position in hopes that to find a successful candidate and they can have some time together before Steve ultimately retires. So I wanted to make sure that that was clear amongst the board and the public. We will also be putting together a press release to that effect as well.
Great, thank you.
So Jack, I understand that you refuse to have any camp for the kids this summer, and that'll go through August. So that's what I'm understanding Radnor Township position is.
This has been voted on, Rich.
I heard it. You voted to keep the township closed down through August. Thank you.
Moving on to public participation. There have been 3 or 4 houses built since the overlay was put in place. Only the last one built by Mr. Basso isn't compliant with the Garrett Hill zoning code, and that's because the township zoning employee didn't enforce the GH zoning code. That concludes public participation. Item 8, adjournment. I will so move. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
No.
Aye. All opposed, nay.
Jack, you once
Motion
again
passes.
conversation. You once again abridged free speech. It's unbelievable. You are the
We are
party.
adjourned.